No, I didn't get anything back from her yet.
You didn't? Okay. I will make sure to hunt her down because I'm sure she will. I don't know if she has class Monday at all, but I'll make sure that I get in contact with her. Because I sent two other requests, two other people asked about coaching. So yeah, just as a reminder too, if you want additional help outside of Flex Labs, or just need additional help too, if Flex Lab schedules don't quite work with yours, we do have our academic coach, and we're just waiting on the times that work. It's gonna be one night time, we know that for sure. And then I sent a request for 2 additional people that asked for help, so I don't know how many more hours that will give her, but it will for sure be another hour and a half, if not a little bit more. So she'll be up to a good 3 hours of time that she can block out and schedule. So if you find you're wanting additional help, let me know. I will post those times for anybody to use it. I have to make sure that I send the note over to coaching so that they just have to track how many people she works with. That's all it is. So if you want any additional help, just let me know. I'll send that. It's technically labeled as a referral, but it sends it through. It just lets you get in contact with Katie to see if there's any other times that work that she can add on to. So we will have more times. I just need to get those times for her so I can post it. It's kind of like an open lab. It's just Katie instead of me or Shay. So whatever.
And then the
you
lab
find
is
works.
tonight out from 7:30. Is it tonight or Wednesday?
Yes, the lab. Yep, the Monday night lab is 7:30 to 9:30. Because we start our classes at 5:30. That's why it's 7:30 instead of 7.
Okay.
But yep, there will be that night section tonight. And I was looking at spring schedule too for those dates to make sure we had a night one.
And this afternoon's 1:30.
1:30. Yep, 1:30 to 3:30. And then Tuesday and then Thursday. So we did Camera Raw last week. We talked a whole lot about Camera Raw, and we're going to talk about it some more. So my question is how are you doing with it? Are there things from last week that maybe you want to go through a little bit more? There's a lot more in Camera Raw, and we're going to spend today doing that. Now our building dedication too starts at 10:30. And I don't know if you had wanted to photograph it, Tiffany. You certainly still can if you want. I know. I'm like, I don't know. I thought about this morning. I'm like, oh, we have stuff here. You can use it. You can. Absolutely. Anyone that wants to. They're looking for, anything for Ronnie for his social media marketing class. They're in charge of our College of Business social media now as a class. So they're doing the Facebook pages and the Instagram pages to start with. He's looking for all sorts of images and things like that. We're going to slowly build a stock photo library of things around the college to use for that kind of stuff in all of our classes. But yeah, you can. It will start at 10:30. The actual ribbon cutting, because it's like everybody talking, and Dr. Affen's got to talk. And I just saw Chris Gaberchuk. He said they're up to 10 people cutting the ribbon. He's like, why does everyone need to get a part of that? It's like, but any politician that calls, they say, sure, you can cut the ribbon too. So they're up to 10 people. But the actual ribbon cutting itself and the drone flying, which is what we want to see, let's face it. We want to see the drone fly in the wind, crash into something. We're going to see if it's kind of windy outside. Brandon's a little nervous. He's sweating. He's a little nervous about flying the drone with all the people in the wind. But
I have a funny story about that for another time.
About it crashing?
Oh, it just took off in the wind in California, and I found it on Craigslist a week later.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
It went a mile and a half. He said the propeller was still spinning because I left the throttle all the way up in case somebody finds it.
Oh my gosh. Oh.
Did you have to buy it back?
No. Well,
It was like a lost and found deal?
the transaction wouldn't be legal here, but
Gotcha.
California legal state.
California legal.
Yeah. No. Give him $10 and chilled and got to know him a little bit.
That's awesome. But yeah, that's going to happen. So that probably won't happen until about 10 to 11, I think is what the plan is for that. So I figure if anyone wants to go up there, if anyone wants to photograph it, it's at 10:30. You can certainly go do that. If you we might just run up there just to show face at the ribbon cutting. That probably about quarter
Since
two.
most of it was for us anyway.
Since it is our half of the building dedication, yeah. So, but they're scheduled to have, I mean, they had 70 people reply, which is good, compared to public safety, and their burn tower only got 10 people to reply. So I'm feeling pretty good. But yeah, we'll just wander up there. So my goal today is to really just take the camera raw conversation a little bit further. There's some more of those tabs that we talked about. There's really two main tabs that I want to focus on, which is the preset and the snapshot tab. But also talking about the adjustment brush. So I know some of you have taken or are in workflow, and we've been talking about the adjustment brush. It's very similar in that aspect, so there's probably only a handful of conversations we need to have around that. So it is very similar, but there are some, obviously the tool itself looks a little different and stuff like that. So that's really where I want most of this conversation to be today, is working with that adjustment tool and then working in those last couple of tabs. So what I'm going to do is find some images here. Reference. I should just download all the sessions I did this weekend and start editing those during class. Do this. Okay, let's pick a handful of things here. I know what I want. That. I want that. And maybe this. So I'm just going to grab a handful of images to open in Photoshop just to show you, as we do certain things, how to apply it to other images.
So you can open multiple images
In RAW.
in Bridge.
Oh, in Bridge?
Yeah.
Or
yes.
to select it open then?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, it is the same thing. It would just be like command clicking like you normally would in the Finder window or anything else when you want to open multiple files. You can command click and then you can open all of those. Let's try this one too and see what happens. So, oh, go ahead.
Did you say you could force JPEGs to open in Camera Raw?
In Camera Raw, yep. It's easy. You would have to go through Bridge. So if you open up Bridge, then when you click on them just like this, you would just go to open in Camera Raw from Bridge rather than double click and open into Photoshop. Then you're going to get the whole raw, like all the tabs, all the tools and stuff like that, versus the Camera Raw filter, which doesn't give you all of them. Now when we talk about the presets and the snapshot tabs, which are these last two tabs here when you're in Camera Raw, those do not exist in the Camera Raw filter. So if you're doing things, whether it's for an assignment or you're just creating presets to use later on, it will not work in the Camera Raw filter. So if you have an image open in Photoshop and then you go under Filter and then you use Camera Raw, you will not see those two tabs show up. And that confused a lot of people last semester because they didn't realize that. But you also will be short a few tools here. Nothing that we're going to use today you won't be missing, but some of the other tools will be. So one of the things that I want to talk about is this adjustment brush. We've been doing what we call global adjustments up until this point, where we're using all these tabs and we're playing with the sliders to get it to exactly where we want it to be, whether it's the white slider, the black slider, exposure, color temperature, all that. It applies it to the entire image. So we might have areas, like in this image, where this register something, I don't know, where I want to change this a little bit. I want that to be a little bit brighter, but I don't want the rest of the image to be bright. So I need to make a little bit of an adjustment. I'm going to attempt to white balance this thing here first. And what I need to do is not a global adjustment and apply it to the whole thing. I need to do a local adjustment, which would be using the adjustment brush in Camera Raw. So we do have a couple of local adjustments that we can make. We're going to start with the brush, but there are three main ones here. There's the adjustment brush, which is that little brush icon. If you're used to Lightroom, it's the same quick key. So it is K for the quick key to get to the adjustment brush, just like it is in Lightroom. That is one nice thing. The other two that we have is called a graduated filter, and we have a radial filter. Those are also local adjustments, and we'll just touch on them just to understand what they are and what they do, but we're going to use them a little bit more in the advanced class, so it's just more of an introduction to those two. So I'm going to start with the adjustment brush, and basically the adjustment brush, especially if you are used to Lightroom, is when we click on it, we have all these sliders that we can work with. And this is going to be specific to the area that we're about to brush. Now, just like any slider, when you double click on a slider, it will reset it back to 0. But if you're looking to, oh, now I have to remember how to reset it here. Where's the click for this one? There's one to reset all of these. Oh, there's a clear button. Nope, but those are my, I thought I could hold down the option key and it would reset all of these, but it does not.
I read that yesterday, that section you were looking for to reset all the sliders. but now I
Reset all
can't
the
remember what
sliders,
it was
yeah,
either.
and I cannot remember where it is in here. Oh, here we go, localize adjustments to initially brush options.
I even highlighted it so I could tell you today and then I forgot.
I wonder if it's this reset local corrections. I know we can click that, but let me move my slider here. There we go. Yeah, if we click on this fly down menu and go reset local correction settings, it will neutralize everything back to 0 or its starting point. The only reason I like to point that out and do that is because as you use this adjustment brush, it holds your last setting. So if I cranked my exposure and my clarity and all this stuff, and this time, oh, I just want to brighten this just a little bit, and I move my exposure, it will still keep those other settings unless I reset it. So I like to get into a habit where I check those at least and reset them manually or just wipe it clean, which would be this little fly down and reset. But there's another quick key to do that, and that's what I'm trying to find. And I want to say it's like holding down an option key and then double clicking one of them and it works, which is frustrating that I can never remember that one. But either way, this little fly out menu, you'll be able to do it.
So where do we do that?
When you're in the adjustment brush, this little menu with the 4 little lines to the right, that last one is reset local correction settings. But I promise I'll dig up that quickie. So all I'm going to do is just decide, like, what part of this image do I want to adjust? Your brush works just like your brush works in Photoshop, where you have the bracket left and right to increase and decrease the brush size. And then at this point, it's kind of a crapshoot where you're just guessing, what is this adjustment going to look like? So you can do just about anything, and then you can go back and you can adjust it after the fact. So I'm just going to guess on the exposure, and because I just want to increase this particular one. But you can set whatever it is for any one of your images. But then you simply just set your brush to the size that you want, and you click and you brush over that part of the image. This is a great way, and you'll talk about this when you're in the advanced class. We talk about dodging and burning. So this is kind of like your little trick. This is how you can dodge and burn using the adjustment brush in Camera Raw. Once you brush, you're going to get this little pinpoint, just like you would in Lightroom. And this pin indicates the starting point of where you started to brush, and it just shows you that you have one pin of one adjustment that you've made. And I can keep brushing if I want to, if I really want to make this brush a little bit smaller and I just want to brush on all these areas. I'm going to zoom in here. If I want to brush on all these areas. But now that I've done it once, I can play with my settings until I get it exactly how I want it. Maybe I want to increase shadows, bring down some noise. There we go. That's looking pretty good. Now, one downfall, and this is a difference if you are used to using Lightroom. Here's one difference. In Lightroom, when we use the adjustment brush, you know how you mouse over it and you see your mask? It doesn't do that in Photoshop for the active one. So this one is active because it's red with a little dot in the middle of it. That's the currently used pin, because I can have multiple ones. That's the one that's being currently used right now. And when I mouse over it in Lightroom, it shows me the mask. It doesn't do that here. But there is a mask button down below where it shows you your mask overlay. And you can change the color to be whatever you want. The default is white, but you can change it to whatever you want if that's a bit easier. So that I can see if I've missed anything. So that's one bonus here. If I've missed part of something and I really need it to be as accurate as possible, I can turn this mask on by checking that box and then brushing the areas. Or if I brushed too much and I spilled over like I did over here, I can use that mask to erase. So not only can I brush in, but I can brush out, just like you would on a layer mask, brushing things in and out. So at the top of the adjustment brush, you'll see right now it's selected to add, because my current pin, I can continue to brush and add to that, essentially a mask, if you want to think of it that way. I'm adding to the current mask. I can choose to erase, which I want to do right now. So I'm just going to erase this spillover here from my, because I had a very feathered brush, so I want to get rid of that. I don't want this part to be lightened, so I can clean up a little bit. I'm spending more time on it than I probably would, but it's okay. This brush does not have any feathering, so it's probably going to be pretty bad looking when I'm done here, because you're going to see those edges. But that's okay. You can change the, I don't remember if we talked about this last week, but you can change the feathering too, just like you do in Photoshop. So if you're doing the bracket key to go up and down, if you do the, do you know that, did we talk about the quick key for adjusting your feathering on your brushes? I don't remember. I think this was workflow. We were talking about this. But if you know your bracket left and right to increase and decrease brush size, if you hold down your shift key and do your left-right bracket, that changes the feathering. So you'll actually see that secondary circle where the outside circle is the edge of that feathering, but the actual hard edge of the brush is that inner circle. So shift left and right bracket is for feathering, and then left and right for the brush size. So it's kind of cool. Now, if I am working on just this particular image, let me go back to erase for a second. Oh, go ahead.
That's interesting, like mine, the erase feathering is completely different than the add feathering.
Then the add, yes, it's actually two different brushes and two different settings.
Okay.
So when you switch back and forth, it remembers the last setting that you had. Yeah, so when you switch between add and erase, it actually allows you two different brushes. And when you, let me see right here, at the bottom here, what you might have to scroll down to the bottom of your adjustment brush. This is where you can adjust the size and feathering of it. And when you click back and forth, you'll see those settings change because it saves the last one. Now let's say I do want to adjust the, I don't know, maybe like the bottom of the image. I want it to be a little bit more uniform as far as the light. So this, while this air exchange is what I'm assuming it is, I want to brighten, I want to darken the bottom. So I can actually add multiple pins here. The only trick is you have to remember to click the new adjustment brush. You will know that you've done it wrong the second you start changing something, because what most people do is like, oh, I want a new one. So I'm just going to start adjusting all of this to do what I want it to do. Let me turn the mask off. To do what I want it to do, and you're like, oh, crud, it's changing the other pin that I made. So you have to remember to hit the new button first, or the quick key is an N. And when you click new, you'll notice that this first pin that was red turns to white. And now when I mouse over it, it works. I can see my mask. But it turns to white, and it's basically deactivating it. So now the next click that I make is going to create a new pin with whatever new settings that I want. Now that this one's deactivated, I can change these settings if I want. I can reset this back to normal if I want. I want to darken the bottom of my image, so I'm going to change the highlights and the whites just a bit. And then I'm going to play with my brush, and then I'm going to start brushing over this part of the image. I'll show you a better way to do this shortly, but now you can see it's changing that part of the image. So now I've darkened the lower part of my image, probably too much. So we're going to change it. Check my before after to see how badly I'm messing it up. So now you can see I have 2 pins. I have one here and I have one down at the bottom. And they have 2 different settings. And I can click back and forth. Whatever one has the red is the active one. So if I look at this speaker and I'm like, or I keep saying speaker, if I look at this air exchange and I'm like, it's a little bit too much as far as increasing the shadows. I just want a little bit of detail on it. I can click on it and bring it back down. Or if I did too much here or not enough, I can go and I can bring it down. To be honest, that's the adjustment brush in a nutshell. I mean, you've got all the same sliders that you do in the basic tab. You have the addition of the dehaze, which is kind of cool. We love the dehaze slider in general. It is also in the adjustment. It is. It's like the go-to slider, especially if you do things with landscapes, outdoor stuff. The dehaze button is amazing. It's basically like it's clearing up fog and haze. Let me see if I can, how it would work on this image. Let me get out of the adjustment brush here and go to, where is it? There it is. Just in general, I almost want to say it's kind of like a contrast slash, I don't want to say clarity because it's really not, but I guess it kind of is. I don't even know how to describe it. Think of a foggy day.
Mountain in the distance.
Yeah.
You could not see the mountain to the naked eye, and they do the dehaze.
Till you do the dehaze.
And all of a sudden you can see the mountain.
And then
The thing
suddenly
is
it's
you
there.
get like a cross hatching, like, you know, kind of like an aged look.
Yeah.
Which is kind of cool if you do black and white too. You can
That's
just
true.
slide it out
Crank
way.
that. Ooh, that'd be fun. We should play with that. Yeah, you could definitely.
I'm messing around with Alcatraz photos in black, doing them all black and white and trying to make them all vintage.
Yes. That's why I brought these up. Gotta get them edited someday.
Oh, that's what that is.
Yeah.
It's Alcatraz.
I knew I recognized it when you pulled it up.
It's Alcatraz.
On my SD card from
Did you find
like
it?
4 years ago. And
Oh my
they're all
gosh.
JPEGs. That's why I asked if I could open the camera raw.
Oh, nice. So that's pretty much the adjustment brush. You do have some sharpness noise reductions sliders in here, which is kind of nice. The only downfall in the adjustment brush versus the actual sharpening and noise reduction, you don't have the additional sliders where you can set like the amount and the radius and that kind of stuff with those sliders. It's just simply sharpen it or don't. And same with the noise reduction. But it is helpful to have that there because when you have those tiny spots where you need to make those adjustments, it works well. We'll talk about some of these other sliders when in the advanced class, we work with this color a little bit, and that's fun for actually recoloring or colorizing parts of an image. If you're looking to correct parts of an image, let's say you have an image where it's in a gym, and the gym has different colored lights, and gyms are notorious for that, where they'll have a fluorescent light and then they'll have a daylight balance light, and depending on where, like a basketball game, where you're running in the gym, your white balance changes constantly. Or you have 2 white balances in the same exact, in the same image, like the foreground's yellow and the background's blue. That's annoying. Like inside to outside photos, where the interior is yellow from a tungsten light and then you have daylight in the window. Using the adjustment brush is really good to help correct that. So if you do have, like this lower half is a little bit more yellow because I white balanced to the ceiling, I could add a new adjustment brush. I'm gonna reset this. And I'm going to add some blue to this particular one. I can actually change the white balance of a particular part of the image to try and match the rest of it. And sometimes if you're just trying to accentuate a color in an image, like sometimes green foliage, even when you do the saturation and stuff, it doesn't work quite right. Playing with the playing with the temperature and the tint might correct some of that issue for you. Actually, that pin alone actually helped quite a bit. I'm setting the white balance. It's a little too blue, but that's okay. We'll go with it. So that's really everything for the adjustment brush. It is going to take a little bit of playing, that's for sure. It is fun. It does help a lot because global adjustments don't work all the time.
No, and I wish I would have known about this like for a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
Especially the dehaze.
The dehaze, yes. And that's not just in the adjustment brush. If you want to use that across the entire image, let me get out of the K here. If you want to use that across the entire image, it falls under the effects tab. And there's your dehaze, and that will do the entire image. I really hope that studio's clean because they're starting to show people. I cleaned it last Thursday, so I hope Thursday night's class had it all clean when they left.
I don't think we went in there last Thursday.
Last Thursday?
We didn't
Probably
either.
not. It was the last day, so I don't
Yeah,
think
we started setting up stuff
Submitted.
in there and then we just didn't.
didn't do it. Because I made sure to clean it before I left Thursday afternoon.
Oh no,
It was spotless.
I don't think we got in there at all actually.
Yeah, I was gonna
Talk
say, I
about
don't,
pricing.
because I knew it was, it was the last day, so I figured you wouldn't be in there. Figured I was safe. And I knew Friday's class wasn't in there, so. Here's hoping. Okay, so I'm going to get out of the adjustment brush. I'm going to go and just show you real briefly the graduated filter and the radial filter. Actually, I'm going to hop back in my adjustment brush because I'm going to get rid of this one pin. Here's one thing I probably should show you. If you do brush something with the adjustment brush and you don't like it, you simply click to activate that pin and hit the delete key and it will get rid of it for you. I am going to do the same with this one. I'm going to keep this single one for now because I want to show you the graduated and the radial filter. They work better in instances where I want to, just that bottom half of the image, just brush it a little bit darker. When I use the brush on the bottom half of this particular image, it's pretty obvious where that line is as far as where I darken the exposure. So for a case like this, I would probably want to use the graduated filter because it's more like, it's like a gradient is what it does. So it's a gradient of the adjustment that you're choosing. You're going to get all the same sliders. Everything is going to be identical. It's just you're drawing a gradient in this case instead of brushing your adjustment on. That's the only difference. So I can, the trick is to remember which direction to go. The nice thing is it doesn't matter what you do because you can change it and adjust it after the fact. So it works just like a gradient. The green is the starting point, the red is the stopping point. And you can twist and turn and you can see how the gradient's gonna flow. But the nice thing is I can change this after the fact because I meant to go this direction. So whatever adjustments you make, it's just gonna gradually fade that out. And where the red line is, that's where the effect ends and the rest of your image continues. So it's just gonna fade it from this starting point all the way up. So things like just darkening that area, this works well for because it's not a very harsh end or edge to make it obvious like, oh, she brushed that corner of the image. It's a gradual change and it does make it a little bit better and a little bit more effective and quicker than brushing. I don't want it to be that blue. I want the image to be blue, but that bottom corner, I would have to brush with the adjustment brush.
Like kind of cool to use, obviously, in any landscape,
Yes.
outdoor family photo that you need your background, and you don't want to go get a overlay from someone. You want to try and do it on your own.
Yes, you could do that. And then you can save them. I'll show you that. That's on my list. That's where the preset tab comes into play. Warm this back up. So when I brush when I do my graduated filter on the, come on. When I do my graduated filter on the lower half, I changed the white balance and the exposure so that it darkened it and made it a little bit more blue to match the ceiling. But the problem is this lower half, these are actually pictures hanging, it was a gallery area, they turn a little bit too blue because they're black and white images. So I'm going back with my adjustment brush just to fix it. Just those parts, but leaving the rest of it hopefully intact as much as possible. I feel like I brushed over the columns. I did. I don't want that to be. I don't want the columns to be affected with that darn feathering. There we go. That's better. So now when I take a look at that before and after of the image, it's quite a bit of a difference between the two, even if I do it this way. It's quite a bit of a difference. So now I've gotten the image to the point of what I saw when I was there versus what my camera was able to capture because of the difference in the dynamic range from the highlight to the shadow. I've brightened the upper corner where it was pretty dark. I had two different color light sources, so I was able to darken this and change that a little bit. So between the graduated filter and the adjustment brush, I'm able to fix my image. The radial filter is exactly that. It's like using a radial gradient with the exact same sliders. So I can use it for like a custom vignette if I want to. Let's reset this. If I want to darken parts of my image or brighten parts of my image. The thing to note with the radial filter is we can choose whether the effect goes on the outside of the circle or on the inside of the circle. And that is that bottom setting right here. So right now I have it set to inside because in the advanced class we were talking about something. So I switched it. By default it will go to the outside, so your effect will go on the outside of that circle. But know that you can change it inside or outside depending on what you're doing. And we will play with that more, like I said, more in the advanced class, but this is just to let you know what's here. But everything else works the same. It's a new, to add multiple ones, editing the existing one. So it's not add like the brush, it's edit, meaning you're just adjusting how the shape of the radial filter works. And this is the same thing with the graduated filter. You can choose how you want it to work. But in this one, you have the option of doing inside and outside, depending on what you want to do. So that's the difference. So that's not too bad. These lights are bothering me. I want to fix them. I want to fix the lights. Just the overexposure of these lights. Too much, too much. My brush is too big.
You said the default is inside or outside?
The default should be outside.
Mine came up as inside.
We were playing with it in advance last week. You might have changed it when we were playing. It will save the last one you used.
Is that toggle in Lightroom too?
Ooh, is there a toggle for that?
I've never used it because it always goes to outside.
It does. Yes, there is. Yep. And I'm trying to think
You don't
where
have to
that
open
one
it.
is.
I just-
Yeah, I'm trying to think where it is. It should be in that same settings. It should be at the bottom, but I'm trying to think it might be in another spot. But there is an inside-outside toggle.
Like for the same reason, a light or the sun.
Yep, exactly. Oh, there's a Lightroom update. If we go into develop and I go into, yeah, it's, yeah. Oh, where is it? It should be invert, right at the bottom. That one says invert instead of inside or
Okay.
outside. That's the one. Does anyone have any questions with the adjustment brush or the graduated or radial filter? They're pretty similar. these are things we will use more, but the exposure to it right now, there is that whole section in your book. It starts on page 222 is where the localized adjustment brush section is. It does go into more depth than what we are going into at this point, but it is a really, really good reference when you're trying to like there's a whole colorized section in here when you're trying to figure out what will work for certain things. I can even give you a hint for something too. If you have a portrait image and you're trying just to do a quick softening of skin tones without having to retouch the whole thing, it's pretty awesome. Let me just click done for a second here. Let's see if I can
was trying
find.
to do that last night or yesterday and I couldn't remember how to do it.
Let's just pick an image. Oh, that's a PSD. Let's get a raw file just to have something. You can use this adjustment brush, and you just take the clarity down. She's like 2.5 now. This is an old one. If you take that clarity slider and you take it down and you brush, the clarity is doing the opposite. So clarity typically we think of as like a glorified sharpening. You can take the sharpening down too on this slider. So between the clarity and the slider, if you just brush over, oops, I didn't mean to grab and move that brush. If you just grab the slider and you take the clarity down versus up, you're softening the skin. You can also take the sharpness down a little bit if you want to. I know it's a baby. I probably should have picked an adult, but it was the closest folder. So this will, there we go, mask out. Yeah, doesn't that look awful? Sunburn. So it's gonna soften the skin fast. It's not necessarily like cloning anything. It's just a simple blur of a skin tone. So the adjustment brush is great in that instance. Now I gotta find these images again. I wish I could just add to what was open. Go inside. That one, that one, that one, and that one.
What, are you hitting Command R?
Yes. From Bridge, I'm just using Command R rather than double clicking. That way, if there's any JPEGs, it opens in RAW.
Yeah, okay.
So now, what I would like to do, I want to get to, I'm trying to remember if the tabs came before or after what I'm talking about. Not legacy presets. Did I show you guys how to sync settings? I don't think I showed you guys that. Okay. I have, let me fix this one and sync it since I did a lot to the other one. So you have the ability, like I tell everyone in the advanced photography class, just shoot with anything besides auto white balance, because even if it's wrong, especially if it's in RAW, it's really easy to fix all of them in one swift movement. So you can have like 100 shots that are all in the same location with the wrong white balance. And we can do this in Lightroom, we can do this here. And after we adjust one of them, with one click, we can adjust all of them and not have to do every single one individually. But if you do an auto white balance, every single time you're shooting it, it's changing it, even just a couple degrees. So even if I make this setting on one and I sync it to the other, I'm still gonna have to go back to every single one because it's going to be slightly different in every single image.
Okay, so I just had, it's not trying to say an argument, but a discussion with our sports and event.
Ooh,
lady.
yeah.
Because remember, I was like, we were talking about the concert, and like you need to shoot it in like a tungsten or something, the whole thing.
The whole
because
thing.
then you can just quickly like do it in one movement, fix your white balance. If you do it in auto, you're gonna have to be fixing every single
Every
photo.
image is gonna be different.
And I don't think she agreed with us, did
Well,
she?
Oh, really?
I don't necessarily agree.
Oh, okay.
The Sony auto white balance
Mhm.
has never screwed me over yet.
Okay.
So,
And
like-
every camera is different.
Like,
That's for sure.
Canon, I will agree that you need to really watch your white balance, and I love Canon. I don't know for Nikon, but I don't know how their white balance is.
For Nikon,
Yeah. Does
I
depend on the
shoot in-
metering,
Yeah.
how you set the metering, and, cause it takes the white balance off of that too.
So,
Cause I never find myself changing the auto white balance in Camera Raw.
Really?
Like, it's very rare
That's
unless I'm going
nice.
for a distinct like film look, like.
Oh,
Where
true.
it's kind of more sepia tone.
Yeah, so it could really depend on your camera.
I think it depends, it's more like personal, like it just
That's
depends,
true.
you might have more work to do.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's true.
Like, the way she explained it in sports and events though, like. it
See,
was
in
kinda
sports, I
like-
could see an auto white balance and just running with it, because when you have all those different lighting situations, especially when you're in like a gym where you have 3 different white balances, I would agree what auto white balance in that case, I would definitely do.
But like, if you're like one of those people like, that go to football games and you upload during halftime.
Yeah.
Then I would see like you want your white balance to be perfect
Perfect.
for the conditions, but if you're just doing an event and editing at a later time.
You can get away with it a little bit more in that case, yeah.
I was so confused because I'm like, when
I
I
swear
did,
we just talked about it.
when I did the volleyball, when I went and photographed volleyball at Southwest, my auto white balance was awful. Like,
Was it?
It was junk from the lights hitting the yellowness of the gym.
Of the gym
floor.
floor, they're awful, that
And
yellow.
they have white jerseys, like white
Oh,
uniforms, so
well, at least
it-
your white balance is easy to fix.
See it, and it was the worst. And then she's talking about a concert, and I'm like, oh my god, if you were at like a rock concert and they had a lot of light effects, you definitely, I wouldn't use an auto light.
I had problems at a concert with auto white balance because depending on where my, like if I did like a spot metering and stuff like that, not only was it taking my meter reading off of it, but my auto white balance goes off of that too.
Right.
So if I did a spot, it was a little bit easier, but
Okay.
spot metering is a pain to do at a concert.
Yeah,
So if I auto white balanced it, it would depend on the color of the lights.
Right.
And it would change everything.
and that's where I was at.
So I struggled with that. So I just did a preset white balance, and then I tweaked it afterwards and just did it to all of them, and it worked just
You
fine.
did a preset, like of a.
Like I did like a tungsten or something like that, whatever one of those preset white
Oh, I
balances
thought
in
you
the
did, like, a
camera would be.
custom one, like a-
Yeah, I didn't. The lights are too hard to do at a
Yeah.
concert to do a custom. So yeah, so I just did a tungsten or whatever the setting was, and then if I had to tweak it, it was a little bit easier just to across the
Yeah.
board do it.
Yeah, I don't.
So yeah, I mean it is a
Camera
preference,
camera.
but I can see auto white balance in certain situations like a gym where it's changing constantly. That I could see.
Auto wasn't too bad where we went for the soccer, but I think it's just because it was more dark colors, so it was absorbing. So
Oh yeah, that's true.
instead of bouncing like
That
at a gym,
was a
it would
hard-
bounce, but at the soccer, in the indoor, it was more absorbent type colors, so it
You've almost
wasn't.
got that turf
so
that soaks
harsh.
up some of
Well,
yeah.
It was like, there was netting below the lights, so you got shadow.
Oh, you
kinda
did. That's
diffusion.
right. I
It was
forgot
like-
about that.
It's kinda using like one of those grids on.
Yeah,
on
like
a
a-
light, so.
yeah.
And then it hits dark green astroturf, cause
Yep.
it's not real turf,
Yep.
so
Yeah.
it's darker. in
So I
general.
did auto
That
there
absorbs
just
that
because
light.
it wasn't like a clear light, like
True.
it was.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't know how to set for that. Cause
Yeah. In that case, then yeah, I would definitely
but like
definitely
she
do
said,
that.
in the gym, never. I would not use auto.
Oh, yeah. It's hard to custom white balance in those situations.
Yeah.
Where you can, I would.
Yeah.
You know, if you know you're outside and your sun is only going to change so much because of the, you know, how, depending on the time of day when the sun moves, it's only going to change so much where it's going to be easier just to have even a tungsten way off wrong white balance that you can just click and fix all of them, because it's a little bit more controlled versus that situation where it's all over the place depending on where they're standing.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I can see obviously in some cases that auto is definitely a good choice. But where you have that control, even if it's the wrong white balance, have it set to something besides auto to make that post-production go a lot quicker.
Okay.
Because what you can do is, if I fix this right now, if I adjust this and this goes there, this is way better. Even just clicking, using my white balance eyedropper tool and finding that gray point, and then maybe tweaking it in however way, shape, or form I want to. Now my other images, I know the settings are a little different, so I'm just going to leave it to the white balance right now. But I can correct this image however I feel I see fit until I get exactly what I want. With any of these tabs, I can make all these corrections. And then if I want to apply it to these last two images, because the white balance needs to be corrected on those two, it's the same white balance in both. And then I can choose whatever settings I want. I correct the first one, do whatever it is that makes you happy. And then, as long as that image is selected first, I can command click or shift click all the rest of them. Highlight all of them, but the one with the blue box around it is the one it's going to pull the settings from. Then, in the film strip, there's that same flyout menu. If I click on it, there's an option that says Sync Settings. And then this is what I can choose. I can check and uncheck anything and everything. There are some presets in here, so if I just want the white balance, I can click white balance, it will automatically uncheck everything else. And I probably would in this case because I know my exposure settings were different, so I don't want to sync those. But I can do all, none, everything in between. I can manually uncheck what I want, do a dehaze, that kind of stuff. But I just do whatever it is that I want to sync, pull the settings from that one, and then it's going to basically paste it on the other ones. And when I hit OK, it just takes a quick second, and now these two are white balanced to the other one with the exact same settings. So everything's correct. I can't necessarily say that the image is totally correct because I got to fix the rest of it.
So could you use that as a texture photo?
Oh yeah,
That
absolutely.
second one?
Yeah,
I think you could, that's really cool.
that would be awesome to overlay on something else.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Go
I
over the
actually
the
know a portrait.
selective. I got the copying and mask the settings.
So in here, come on, where is it? There we go. So in here, you want, so are you talking like the adjustment brush, stuff like that, to
Yeah.
copy that? If you want to copy that, you have to click local adjustments at the bottom. Same thing with spot removal. We haven't talked about the spot removal tool. It's like a cloning.
I was back.
Cloning
I
stamp.
didn't realize the spot, I hadn't gotten as far as clicking, and the box pops up. Never mind.
Okay.
Could you do it just one more time or just
Yep.
show the path?
So if I make my adjustments here,
Yep.
then I'm going to shift click to highlight all of these. Otherwise, I can command click if I have more that I don't want it to apply to. Then I'm going to go under this flyout menu.
Okay,
Sync settings is right in the middle.
okay.
And then I can choose from there what I want and what I
What
don't
you
want.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I will often fully correct one image and then say I want this to go to all the rest of them, but I don't want my crop or my local adjustment might be a little off. Rarely do I think you're going to copy a local adjustment, but if you have, let's say you're going to do like a merge to HDR type of a thing, which you can do in here. We're not going to talk about it in this class. That's an advanced class conversation. But you can merge to HDR in Camera Raw if you want to. And let's say you need to apply like a graduated filter, and it's going to be the same on all the images. You could do that before you merge and copy those local adjustments. That would be an instance where you would, because your image is on a tripod, so nothing's changing as far as composition. The image is identical, so that a local adjustment would be identical on all of them. So you could copy it in that case. Same thing with spot removal. Spot removal is great if you have dust on your sensor or on your lens. You can fix it in one image, like as long as they're all vertical or horizontal, whatever. You can fix it on the vertical image, and then you can sync the spot removal on all the other vertical images, so you don't have to do it in every single one.
You can also kind of use it as a healing brush too.
Yes.
You don't want to go through the whole aspect of skin retouching.
Exactly. Yep, it will work great.
It's like a really cool cheat.
It is. It works great in those instances.
So, I just feel like after this, especially with like a shoot, I mean, I couldn't see using Photoshop after knowing how much you can do in here unless I needed a serious fine tune,
Mm-hmm.
get rid of a double chin or, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Honestly, this, I
I
didn't know.
I agree.
this much of a raw. I
Yeah,
just
there's
didn't-
so
Like
much.
it would pop up and I would just fix a few things and then go right into Photoshop.
Yep.
And I don't see needing to do that. really.
I think what you can do in here, I would, because this is non-destructive at this point.
Yeah.
So you can always go back and make that change, and it will save it as an XMP file so that you can, you know, it will save everything that you do, every history state essentially, and then you can take any part of that away. Rather than once you bring it into Photoshop, now you have a second file you have to save, and then you always have to go back to the original to make a change, to go do something else, or, you know, it doesn't
And then
have limitations.
And then the other thing I realized when I was writing my little summary, or reading and then writing.
Yeah.
It's so cool because in Lightroom you have the snapshots. that
Mhm.
you do. I did not know you could do that in Lightroom. So you could do that to like a portrait if you wanted a black and white in this, or you know what I mean, like in
Exactly.
there's a snapshot and you have two different ones right away.
Yes.
It's just crazy.
It's
You're
insane
right,
what you
this
can
could
do.
be its own program, like it
It
should be.
it is essentially. So I was searching for an updated book for a class to see if there was a new version of it, because my book things were due last Friday for spring, and I came across another book. It's entirely camera raw. It's like a 400-page book, and it's solely this plugin.
So what would be the
What the
biggest
heck?
difference between using this and Lightroom? Besides having to like open it up in Bridge, I know that's another step.
That's
but I
another
mean,
step.
Yeah.
It's essentially
Like pretty much the
pretty
same
much
thing.
the same thing. Yeah. The
Okay.
only bonus, I guess, is that honestly, it's pretty much the same thing.
Okay.
I don't see a huge difference. There are a few little things in here that would be a little bit different than Lightroom, but they've almost synced those two entirely. Like their capabilities are pretty much identical
Okay.
in what they can do.
Do you feel like doing it in here is easier than Lightroom? I almost feel like it is.
I do.
I do.
I can see it being easier in some cases. I'm used to just, I go through and I organize, I make my adjustments, and then I do bring it into Photoshop where necessary.
Yeah.
But honestly, I'm to the point where rarely do I bring something into Camera Raw here to do it, because I'm doing it in Lightroom already. I just
Yeah.
bring it into Photoshop to do my fine tuning and stuff like that.
Like, I can see a lot of the, obviously, Lightroom, the lighting stuff. and
Yes.
All of that, where for portrait photographers, that's huge. That is a little bit easier, I can see, but like this kind of stuff where you have all these one-off pictures and stuff like that, I mean, this is so great.
And the preset.
Do you have to open it up in Photoshop though to convert it to a JPEG?
Yeah.
No.
No, you don't.
Export
How
From
do you-
Lightroom?
No, from Camera Raw.
From Camera Raw? Nope. We can do that right here. That is right here. The save images in the lower left
Oh,
corner.
okay.
You can
I've
do
always just been
everything.
opening it
And then save?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is like a batch save essentially. So if I have a ton of images open and I want to save all these as JPEGs now, highlight them, save images, and then I can choose what kind of file I want. And then all the compression,
Okay.
and then where it's going to go, the select folder right here, where it's going to go.
I rarely open Photoshop these days.
Because you can do it all right here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, unless I'm designing something for my website, like a little banner or something,
where you need the text and the stuff like that. Yeah.
or
There's
if I'm editing
so
JPEGs,
much.
I was just opening it in Photoshop, but now if you can force it into Camera Raw, it makes it
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah, force the JPEGs in there, because it will save that. It embeds that XMP within the JPEG versus the XMP file being separate by default, like a RAW file. But all your settings will save in there, and it will recognize that.
So if I'm not in that Lightroom class now, it might be easier when I go into that
Yeah,
Lightroom
it
class
will.
next semester.
Because all
Okay.
these similar developed settings and stuff
Okay.
like that, yeah, it's all right there.
Okay. But I might like it more then, because there's. who knows,
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the one bonus that Lightroom does have is it has not only the organization part of it, and then some of the, like, we can create a book or we can create certain layouts and stuff right within Lightroom. Whereas here we would have to adjust the image, but then open it to do everything else. In Lightroom, we have the capabilities of, as I'm building this book or something, I can say, oh, that doesn't look good, or I need this image in black and white now because it matches everything else on that page. I can simply just flip over to the develop module quick, make that change, and then it will update it in my book. Whereas here, I would have to update it, save it as another file, and then re-import it into whatever I'm building. So that is one nice thing, is that that's all in one application versus I would have to go back and forth. But as far as raw capabilities, I mean, it's essentially the same.
Good to know.
What class do you take to learn like Lightroom and stuff? Because I
Workflow.
Workflow.
Yep.
And that is a required one for
Yes.
this program, so I'll be taking it at some point.
You will be. Yep, it is a second semester class. So right now, come next fall, it's going to move to first semester.
Yeah.
I'm in my, I'm in second semester though.
Do you have a full load though? You might not have the full credit load for the semester. Do you? Because then you would have Lightroom.
Maybe I just took it in a different, I think I fumbled with it to take it in a different order, cause when I was
Could be.
looking at what I was doing, cause next semester, I'd already talked to you about it, I'm gonna be gone for like 2 weeks, remember?
Yes.
So I was you said to take these
These
classes this
because
semester,
then, that's right.
'cause it was easier to miss 2 weeks of the other ones.
Yeah, that's right.
Like I'm
That's
taking
So
first
that's probably
semester
right.
courses. Like,
You are?
It let me take it in such a weird order.
There's certain prerequisites that are tied to it. We tried to get it. The hard thing, it's like this double-edged sword every time we have to do curriculum stuff, because like we have to be able to make sure everyone's taking classes in the right order. We can't tie a prerequisite to everything because some people might come in with like just as a course taker, not a program taker, and so we have to allow them to be able to take certain classes because they come in with certain, like from industry, just to gain extra knowledge. And if I tie these prereqs, then they can't take the class, but they already know how to do all this stuff. And so it's such a pain. It's like, do I tie a prereq? Do I not? Is it okay? What if a first semester student takes it? Is that going to be the end of the world? It's this constant battle. So there are some of those classes that you can get into without it being an issue. But yeah, it's this conversation every year. What do we do? And then of course we have to wait a whole year before it actually takes effect. It's a headache. We're doing that right now. It's a headache. But yes, this is how you would save it. That save images icon in the bottom corner. And for some of your assignments, you'll have to do this. So it is a good conversation to have right now, I guess, is that when you are done with an image, you can simply click the done button. It will save everything and just simply close it so that the next time you open it, everything's there. Or you can open them into Photoshop, which we talked about. But then in that lower left corner is Save Images, where we can save them as a different file type. And you can select a single image or all of them at once if you have multiple ones open. It will just be the difference between Save Image and Save Images. That would be the difference. But then you have a variety of different file types that you would want. I get the PSD one, but to me it kind of doesn't make sense because if
Yeah.
I want to do it as a PSD, I'm going to open it in Photoshop.
Yeah.
But I can see that I'm going to edit this later, so save it as a PSD now. So then I just open it and then simply hit save and I'm done.
Okay.
So I can see that, but rarely do I use that. But we have the TIFF, the JPEG, and then we have the DNG option. So if you're not familiar with a DNG is a digital negative. It's like the PDF of raw files, where a PDF is a universal file to be able to open anywhere. That's what the DNG is. Because like Noelle's, we can't open her raw files right now. She could save it as a DNG file on her computer and be able to open it as a raw file here to be able to do all raw things that we need to do. So it's just a uniform raw file is all a DNG is. Capital, lowercase doesn't matter. I still find that to be kind of a joke. It doesn't matter if it's all lowercase or if it's all capital as far as the file extension. Some computers just default to all uppercase and some are all lowercase, but seriously, there's no difference. So you can choose whatever you want, and then there's settings that are tied specifically to whatever file type, as far as like compression for a JPEG, that kind of stuff. So you can choose whatever you want there. You can right off the bat here choose a different color space if it's different, if you have to edit in something different than what it's coming in as. But yeah, just work top to bottom.
Just off topic, but on this thing. Okay, so in your color space and your depth is only 8 and not 16.
And not 16.
Okay,
Mine was set that way.
but what is that? Now I'm opening up some of my files and they're only 8. Like, how did that happen?
It could be your camera setting, and it could be what this setting is right here in the workflow. So in this middle little, it's the workflow options, but it looks like a link in the bottom middle. You can change it to 16 here,
Okay.
and then from there it would open in Photoshop as a 16-bit.
Okay.
Otherwise, by default, it does 8. and I found the page. Ooh, was it a different? I'm trying to think. No, it was a link. I found a good link that shows a good visual as far as bit depth, because I know we had that conversation.
Yeah, I can't remember what.
It's, bit depth is weird. And I found, wait, did I have it in this class? Maybe it was this class.
That's why I couldn't remember what class, but we did talk about it.
We talked about it.
We realized.
And
What?
it was, nope, it was the advanced class. I will copy it because I found it. I was prepping everything for the week and I'm like, hey, we were talking about this. And I want to, is it the skin? No, that's the book itself. I found a link and it had a good explanation with, crud, it wasn't this one.
No, I think
Where
it
did I
was
find
our
it?
workflow class.
Yeah, and I found, yeah, I think it was workflow when we were talking about it.
Because I'm not in advance, so.
But I was digging through another class this weekend and I
Oh.
found one of my bit depth links. And now I can't remember which class I thought it was just those two. Now I can't remember which class it was that had all the links. Because there's too many classes.
That's what I'm saying, there's
It's like
all-
6 different classes and they're all just blending together. I swear it was the color correction one. And it is most certainly not. Darn it. And it was last night I came across it again, like, oh, I gotta copy that because we were talking about it. Crud. Well, that's just going to annoy me because I seriously was looking at it last night and I know it wasn't workflow that I found it in because I was digging through these 2 classes. Dang, I could have sworn it was this class. That's gonna bug me now. I will find it because I was like, there it is. It was a really good visual that just was talking about bit depth and it was just showing like the gradual change between colors in a 16-bit versus 8, where the more bit depth, just think of like a black and white image where it goes from white to black and the steps in between, like the different grayscale steps going from white to black. And the more bit depth you have, the more gradual and smoother that transition is from white to black and all the grayscale in between. Whereas if you have an 8-bit, it's going to be a bit choppier as far as seeing that gradation from white to black versus a 16 because there's more colors essentially, or more color pixels. And it's just a little bit more graded and smoother of a transition. So the more bit depth you have, the smoother that transition is from one color to the next, because there's more colors in between there. And it was just a really good visual, and now I'm going to be mad that I can't find it. But that essentially is what that bit depth is. But you would want that changed in this workflow options if you want to edit in 16-bit depth in Photoshop versus the default, which should be set to 8. So if you change it there, when you open it and save it, you'll have that option. And it does depend on the file type too. Like a JPEG, it wouldn't necessarily let me save a different, I'm in a DNG here. It wouldn't necessarily let me save in a 16-bit for a JPEG versus other, if I do Photoshop, I should be able to get 16. JPEGs would only let me do an 8-bit. So the file type matters too. So there's 2 tabs. The last 2 tabs are the only 2 I want to show you and talk about, is the preset tab and the snapshot tab. So the preset tab is essentially you have adjustments that you make often or cool effects that you've applied that you think would work well on other images, and it's really just saving those. Now the trick is with the presets is that they are only on that particular computer that you're working on by default, unless you save them out. So I will show you how to save that, but for now, we'll at least get these presets created. So let's say I have, on this image, I want to, and I'm just going to, let me just do this really quick before I change something. Okay. I'm going to change this image to black and white. I have a black and white setting that works really well once I actually do get it to that point. And I'm just gonna say that this particular black and white setting works really, really well. And I have other adjustments that I've made too that kind of contribute to it. And I want to save this and apply this to other images. Not just like a sync setting, which I could do, but if this is after the fact, like days later, I'm like, ooh, that would look cool in black and white. I can now click a button and it's done. It's kind of like an action in Photoshop if you're used to it, something we'll talk about later when we talk about automation, but it's doing it right within Camera Raw, which in action we can't run in Camera Raw. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go to this preset tab, and at the bottom, I'm gonna click this little new layer icon, and it comes up very much like the sync settings do, and I can check and uncheck what I want and what I don't want.
Which one did you click?
The little new layer looking icon in the bottom of the preset tab, right next to the trash can on the lower right. And this new preset would pop up. So I can choose to save what I want and what I don't want. In this case, I'm just gonna do everything because I kind of want this whole effect, you know, like the contrast setting I just did, the clarity, and the black and white setting. So I'm just gonna call this like, and you can title it, you have to title it something up at the top, black and white. Maybe I'll just do Alcatraz just because I might apply this only to these particular images, who knows? Because I might have other black and white settings. Just simply calling it black and white probably wouldn't be the best decision because you might have multiple black and white images or presets that you save because every image is different when it comes to black and white. And it really, that's all it is. Checking what you want to save and unchecking what you don't, and then giving it a title and hitting OK. And you'll see it show up in this list. And I'll show you what that does in just a second here. I'm going to apply a, let's see if I can remember. Let's see if I can remember the filter that I want.
Jessica, how do you get it in the presets? Because when my presets are blank. But how did you
It's
get
completely
it?
blank. Okay, so when you click this, and then here you'll just, I mean, you should be able to leave everything, and then just give it a title. When you hit OK, it should show up in that list. There are actually presets that people will sell. There are presets that you can download for free. And then when you save your own, you can also sell them or move them on different computers if you want to. And it just populates in here on this computer under this user account so that I can have this whole laundry list of presets if I want. If I want to create, let's see if I can remember the settings though.
Is it really different though if you have all different lighting?
It would be different with different lighting. That's why I have, like on my computer, I probably have like 6 or 7 different black and white presets that I use often. So yeah, you'll probably have multiple ones, but every image would be different. It's great for effects where you know it's pretty much the same on an image, like if you have a vintage effect or something like that. It works really well in that case. I want to see if I can remember. It's magenta, and then it's a desaturation. I'm just kind of winging it right now. See if I can remember. I remember the clarity was kind of ridiculous. I'm trying to remember. Shadows were up, lights were down. That's too much magenta. I'm trying to remember this vintage setting that I've done before. I have the directions for it in a different class. We do it. Nope, it is in fact that one. It's kind of there. Let's get the vignetting. I want post-crop. Oh, post-crop vignetting. A little bit of that. Roundness. Sure, we'll go with it. Let's pretend this is a vintage effect. It's not quite where it needs to be. It's too magenta. But we're going to pretend that this works. And this is an effect I want to save and apply to other images. So I can go to that presets tab. I can save that if I click it correctly. And I'm just going to call it vintage. Save everything. And it is capturing all the settings of the check marks that I left checked. Now I can go to any image if I want to. And I can simply click that. And all those settings are applied to that particular image. I'm going to undo it.
can I just have a quick question, not a question, maybe just your thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
So, like you were doing this, and you do a black and white one.
Mm-hmm.
Is it just me, or do other people feel this way, that sometimes like multiple black and whites look good? I can never
Yeah.
decide. How, is there like a standard, is there something?
There
as a
isn't.
photographer, like, oh my god, you can't put that black and white with that one. Like,
Yeah,
I get
no.
so confused. I get paralyzed by too many decisions.
Yes.
And that happens to me often in Lightroom, Photoshop, all of them, because there's
Black
like
and
so
white
many
is-
things you can do.
It's ridiculous.
Is it just your
Let's see if I
artistic?
can.
It's the
Like-
same with
It really is.
regular color photos, like.
Oh yeah,
if
we're gonna
you
talk about color
oversaturate
correction
it
next.
Or undersaturate, no vibrance, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's just so many ways, and I just wanted to know, is there like some sort of a rule that photographers just know, hello, that's a warm photo, so you can't use that black and white?
You can, yeah, you have to, your eye eventually will go, you'll get to that point with your eye when you look at an image, you're like, that's gonna be awesome in black and white. And when you turn it to black and white, you're like, it's not what I saw, but then you adjust the settings and you're like, that's exactly it.
Okay.
It's a balance of contrast and texture and trying to figure out, like how much red is in it. Do I want that red to be darker or lighter? And then you just have to, if you visually can see that it's gonna make a good black and white, it's gonna be a matter of playing with it until it looks like the black and white you envisioned.
And so like, just a quick thing.
Hence
because
presets.
Doing a birth photo shoot.
Oh yeah.
In a hospital, not home, in a hospital. And there's rarely, probably very rare that I've seen very good birth photo shoots that were done in color.
That are in color. Yeah, you
Yeah.
usually see them all in black and
There's
white.
too many distracting.
And it's dark in there, so black and white ones are working better.
Yeah, so.
Here, I think these
so
are the
when
ones
you
I was
do
thinking
that,
of.
And it was like I did multiple presets, and I just went with what I thought my eye
I don't have them
like
with
was
me.
telling me looked best. But
Yeah.
I was so confused. I'm like, is there just a rule? Can someone just give me a rule so I just can know? Or you just have to
There are a ton of ways to turn an image to black and white.
train?
And
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember, is it
And you can always do,
this
like,
book or is it the other
50% black and
Photoshop?
white, where you drop like the saturation 50% and it's
Yeah.
black and white.
And it's almost black and white to begin with.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Sometimes that looks good.
It depends on what you're doing, like, you don't wanna make it look
There-
like some old crime scene photo.
No.
You know?
There is an entire chapter on black and white. Chapter 5 is
Really?
all black and white, and we're going
It's
to,
mostly just
and we're going to discuss it.
And that's what I felt like. I'm like, I'm just flying blind here. I'm just doing what I think. But I just had wondered, is there like,
You can look at an image, once you get the eye for it, you can look at an image and decide whether the settings for the black and white are good.
okay.
It just takes a bit to get there.
Yeah, because
So
like, if
we're
you're,
going to talk about it.
like, not taking away from RAW, but if you're in Lightroom and they have 7 presets already in there for, and there's like creamy tone and high contrast and all this stuff, and you're going through it, and some of them look good, some of them don't, and you're trying to tell yourself, why?
Why do I need so many?
But you're trying to, okay, so the high contrast, it's not looking good, and 6 months ago I wouldn't have known why.
Mhm.
Now I know why.
Mhm.
So you're getting, I guess I'm getting there, but I was just wondering if there was just like some standard.
Yeah,
that you
no.
have to use.
There's good starting points
Okay,
that you can use, but then
Okay.
every image just gets tweaked until it looks right.
okay.
Yeah. Yep. But you can do that. You can build several settings if you want. So if it works well for one image, you're like, that's great. You could save it and then try it on another image. I found I've done that before I did this in Lightroom, not in Camera Raw, but I have probably like 10 different black and white presets in Lightroom where it just looked good on an image and I thought, I bet I could use that again. So I saved it as a preset. And then I tried on different images and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I have several ones that I've used over and over again that I saved. And this is exactly what this preset is you just save settings that you do a lot. Like in my camera, I know I have to do a contrast adjustment because my camera doesn't capture the contrast I want. So I always do a contrast adjustment on the images. So I save that simple contrast adjustment as a preset. So all I have to do is click on it and it's done. I don't have to go into the curves. I don't have to tweak my curve the way I want to. It's just done.
Okay.
So it works well.
Yeah.
And that's what I would use this preset for. And you can download presets on one. I don't have them on my external hard drive. It's on my laptop. But On One is a company that we have the software for something else that we use. It's an editing software. It's pretty cool. I haven't used their new Raw one yet, but they have a free download of some Camera Raw presets that you install into Camera Raw, short of just filling out this form and then it sends you the link. But I've gotten it already. I just have to find it. And then you install it, and then you have this laundry list of presets. And there's other places you can get it from, but I've used their presets before, and they're pretty cool. They have Lightroom presets too. So you can download some that exist, put them on there. You can create your own, and then it's as simple as just clicking. And if it's like, oh, well, I don't like that one, but oh, this looks good.
Yeah.
You can simply just click through, and if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. You can easily undo whatever you want back to where you started, apparently not the original. Darn it, I didn't save a snapshot. Come on, go backwards. No, not between the two. Dang it. Now I have to undo. What if I did this? I'm not going to get back to what I started with. Oh. Custom settings. Curse you. This is why, oh yay. This is why we use the next tab, snapshots. Because when we do all of these different presets and stuff like that, we might want to get back to a previous state or the original or something like that. So snapshots is a great habit to get into regardless, because not only that, I can have my image in black and white, in color, in a vintage effect, the original image, and I can easily flip back and forth between the two without saving multiple images. And this is what I think you're really going to like. In snapshots, snapshots is the very last tab, and it has the same thing. It's like a new layer icon at the bottom. And this is essentially saving history states or settings. Not to be used like the presets where I can apply it to other images, but for this particular image. I love using this. If you have used virtual copies in Lightroom, this is like the same thing without having a virtual copy of it. Your snapshots are your virtual copy. So I can bring this up and I can call this like edited color if I want to. I can then, let's say I go into presets, I change it to black and white. I'm like, ooh, that looks cool. Maybe I want to tweak just a little bit in the yellow. That orange is killing me today. This is why I love the orange slider and it's nowhere else.
I used it a lot for skin tones.
See, isn't it ridiculous?
Every photo, it was amazing.
You're like, what do I do without the orange slider? Why is it not in Photoshop? So now I have a black and white. I like that. I'm gonna save that one. Black and white. And let's say I did this vintage effect to it, and maybe I'm gonna tone down that pink because it's really driving me crazy, especially here. And I want to brighten this a little bit more. There we go, that's not so bad. And now I'm gonna save in a snapshots, I'm gonna save the vintage one. Here's what's really cool. When I click done, it saves all of that. All those snapshots stay there. It's not like in Photoshop with the history palette where once I close it, my history's gone. It's there. Every time I open up this image and I go to snapshots, I can use this like from a client standpoint. I can open this up and say, here's your image. Now we have the option, we can do this just the edited color image. I can do this in black and white if you want to, or I can apply a vintage type of effect that might fit better in your house. You know, whatever it may be, I can now flip back and forth between all these different versions of my image. And then whatever one I want to use from there on, I can save it. I can open it in Photoshop and do stuff with it. I can do whatever I want. But all these different versions are in the snapshots. Or if it's simply a before-after case, I can click on snapshots when I first open it, save the before, do edits, do different after versions of it. It's really, really cool, especially when you want to see what it looks like in color, in black and white, with a certain effect, with the dehaze, you know, that kind of stuff. If you want to show a progression of an image, or if you want to show different variations of it, or simply a before-after, snapshots is really what you want to use. And I think it's a good habit to get into, because being able to see that and flip back and forth without redoing all these settings is pretty awesome. And you can save as many different versions. It's not adding to the file size at all. It's an XMP file. It's kilobytes. of space. So versus having 5 different JPEGs of the same image that I had to just resave over and over, or PSD files, I now have one image with kilobytes of space to have variations of the exact same image. It's awesome.
So say for maybe a homework assignment, you need the XMP file?
So you might need to do that.
Okay, so once you've done that, it creates an XMP file and
Yes.
okay.
Yes, exactly. So it's part of that XMP with all those adjustments. So yeah, so let's say for a homework assignment, you have to do that. Hint, hint. You do. And with the 2 minutes I have left, I'm going to explain that to you. So hopefully those presets and snapshots make sense. You're going to use the snapshots quite a bit, especially with assignments, just because I can't necessarily see different things that you do without them. So it's going to be necessary. So just remember, if you're editing something and you have to use a snapshot for it, you cannot use the camera raw filter, or you won't be able to do it at all, because those 2 tabs don't show up at all in the filter. Bless you. Just so you know.
Sorry.
So I'm going to open up this assignment here, and I left it as open as humanly possible for it. I do want to see that you can do certain things in Camera Raw. You are going to be doing snapshots for these, not screenshots, but that snapshots tab. So you are going to, there is a screenshot, one screenshot that I have you do, simply because I can't, the presets don't travel with it. So when you create a preset, I have to have you take a snapshot of that one. But for this assignment, you are going to edit 10 images in Camera Raw. Doesn't matter if it's a JPEG or a RAW file in this case, but obviously the RAW is going to give you more capabilities. So you are going to, and I'll give you the option too if you want to submit it as a DNG file or just the RAW file. The DNG, you would have to hit the Save Images icon down here and then save it as a DNG, and it would save all of this information within the file. I think it's going to be easier if you keep it as a RAW file. The only thing to remember is that when you submit this work, you need the RAW file and the XMP. If you don't, unless you change that setting so it's embedded inside of it. But if your computer's set up to have a separate XMP file, you have to have the XMP, or I can't see a single thing you've done. So that file, so in your, when you go to find those images, further, this one. That lovely XMP file that's created with the same name as your original RAW file, if that does not travel with it, all of your adjustments and everything you've done for your homework is in that file, and I can't see it without it. So just be sure to grab both if you're transferring between computers or something like that. If you do it at home and bring it here and it's on that computer, make sure you grab the XMP. So what you're going to do is there's basically, oh, I'm sorry, I said 10 images. I'm thinking of the other class. 4. 4 images, sorry. I'm thinking the other class. The other class I have 4 things that they have to do between 10 images. I'm mixing them up now. Okay, so you are just going to edit the 4 images, but each one has a different thing that we've talked about. So we have the first one, which is editing the tone curve. So you're going to use that parametric or point, that second tab in Camera Raw. I want you to edit with that. It doesn't matter which one you use. If you use the parametric or the point, it's whatever you feel most comfortable with. But I want you to edit an image based off of that using the curve, just to practice. May not be perfect. It may not, you may get a little frustrated with playing with it if you're not familiar with it, but it's more just practice a little bit with that one. You can do additional settings to if you need to do additional adjustments to these images, as long as that part of it is within one of the images. So as long as there's one with a tone curve adjustment to it. You are going to label, you're going to do a before after with all of these. It's failing. You're going to do a before after with all of these. So when you open the image, get in the habit of open the image, go to snapshots, create the before. then do everything you need to do, then create the after snapshot. Because all 4 of these images you need to do that with.
Can you say that one more time?
You're going to open the image and you're going to create this snapshot of the before. Just get in the habit of open, create the before snapshot, do your adjustments, and then you'll create the after snapshot.
I guess I missed like how you save your snapshot.
So you don't have to. When you click done, it's embedded with the XMP file with the raw. So as long as you have that XMP file, then it will have all that information. It will save the snapshots. So when I open this image, so if I click done right now, and this is your graded assignment, if I go to this image and I open it in raw to grade it, when I go to snapshots, I'm gonna see everything you've saved there. Yep, it will be there. So you won't have to do anything but create those, and then it will be there as long as you don't hit cancel. Then you're fine. So you're going to do that with all of them, but the first one is a tone curve adjustment. The second image you'll do before or after, but you're going to do the HSL sliders. So this is the hue, saturation, the luminance. You're going to adjust that with those images, or with that particular image. The third image is going to be hand tinting. Now we didn't discuss this part of it, but it is in that chapter of the book. So I want you to try and do this one on your own. And I'm gonna give you the exact page number here so you don't have to dig through this horrifically long chapter. It's in with the hand coloring mode. 233. It's in the local adjustments. So this is essentially taking our local adjustments that we've talked about, but what you're gonna do is you're gonna have a black and white image, and you're going to colorize that image. Not to the extent of the ranch house. That's not exactly what we're doing, but you're gonna colorize it. So starting on page 233, it talks about the hand coloring, and it will kind of walk you through what to do with that and how to do the colorizing of the image. It's basically the adjustment brush and that little color spot that I was describing to you guys earlier, down here where it says color.
So
You're going to be using that.
So you make an image black and white and then you come back and color.
And then you color it. Yep. You'll find that you're not only just coloring it, but you're going to play with these sliders to get the color that you want, because you'll get frustrated with just selecting the color. And I have 1 minute to show you that, so I'll just pick it real quick. So if I'm colorizing this column right here, and I'm coloring it, and I picked a blue, but it's nasty. I don't like how that looks. I'm gonna end up having to play with these sliders to get the exact color that I want. I'm gonna have to play with these just a little bit to get the blue as light, as dark, as faded as I want it to be, and probably come back and tweak it a little bit. So you're gonna find that the color you choose is not what you expect to choose, but you have to play with all those sliders equally to get it the color the way you want. So that one's gonna be the challenge out of all of them, just so you know. Whoops. Get rid of that one.
I have a quick question.
Yep.
I just was going to try to save our book summaries,
Mm-hmm.
and I forgot to go in there this morning, but there isn't anything, like, where should I put it?
Should be in the chapter 2 summary. Right there where it has the list of the pages to read, that's where you submit it. That top one right there.
Oh, you don't want it in your, okay, never mind.
Yep, you'll submit it right through there.
I thought you wanted it on the server.
Oh, gotcha. No, I'll submit it right through there if you have it in digital copy. The last one, you just have to follow these steps. It tells you when to take the snapshots and stuff like that, and what to do for it, so you should be fine with that one. So you will submit these 4 images onto the server. Don't change the file name after you've made the adjustments. That will screw up everything. Change the file, if you're going to change the file name, change it before you make the adjustments, because once that XMP file is attached to it, if you change the name, it disconnects everything and it's a pain to reconnect.
So
Sometimes
change
it does
one.
work.
select one, change it to like tone curve.
Change it to tone curve before you do adjustments. If you wanna change the name, it will be in your snapshots, so it should not be necessary. You could probably just leave them all. When I go to the snapshots, I will know which one is which. But if you feel like changing the name just for your own sanity, change it before you do any adjustments in order for it to work.
Okay, we should pick 4 different images, or do these adjustments on one image, do 4 different adjustments?
I would say 4 different images, but if you have one image that works both for the HSL and the tone curve, I wouldn't be heartbroken about that.
Okay.
That would be fine. The hand tint will definitely be a different one than the other ones. So, yep, and then don't forget there's one snapshot in this 4th one. You're gonna take a snapshot of the preset panel after you create it and submit that. So you'll submit the 4 images with the XMP files and the 1 screenshot next week. That's what you'll do. Make sense? Awesome, I took way too long. I'm telling you, 2 hours is not enough. I'm gonna ask for 3, switch to the lab hours with it.